Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. What I have here is a fairly healthy orchid, and as you can see, the plant has already bloomed a beautiful flower. Its petals are vibrant, delicate, and full of life, the kind of sight that reminds us why we love growing orchids in the first place. But not all beauty lasts. With time, the flowers fade and the plant begins shifting its energy back into survival and growth. And in today's video, we're going to explore the magic known as propagation, a process that gives your orchid a chance to create new life, new roots, and even future blooms. So let's get started. We're going to first use a scissor and carefully cut off the flower spike. This will be our main part for the propagation. As you may know, once the flowers fade, the spike doesn't do much for new growth. It simply dries up and takes energy from the plant. But here's where orchids are different. That same flower spike can actually be used as a starting point for propagation, giving us a chance to create a whole new plant from what would normally be discarded. We're going to start by taking a clean, sterilized pair of scissors and carefully cutting off the flower spike. This will become the main material for our propagation process. When cutting, always make sure your tool is sharp and sanitized, because orchids are sensitive plants and any small infection can cause problems later on. Now, as you may already know, once an orchid finishes blooming, the flower spike itself doesn't serve much purpose anymore. It no longer pushes out new leaves or strong roots. Instead, it slowly dries up and begins draining the plant's energy. Most people would simply cut it off and throw it away. But orchids are unique. That old spike is not just waste. With the right care and conditions, it can actually become the foundation for propagation. Now we will need to switch to a clean and sterilized razor blade. This is important because the razor allows us to make very fine and precise cuts, something scissors can't always do. Before you begin, take a moment to disinfect the blade with rubbing alcohol or by briefly passing it through a flame, then letting it cool. This simple preparation step helps protect the orchid from harmful bacteria or fungus that could enter through the wounds. With the razor ready, we're going to make a few deliberate cuts along the edges of the flower spike, as well as on selected points of the stem itself. These cuts don't need to be deep. In fact, they should be just shallow enough to open the outer layer, almost like creating a gentle scratch. What we're doing here is encouraging the spike to respond as if it has been injured. Plants are remarkable in how they react to stress. When an orchid feels a small wound, it begins sending energy and hormones to that spot, and under the right conditions, this can trigger the formation of tiny buds or keikis. Take your time with this step, work slowly, and try not to press too hard. Precision is key here, because if the cut goes too deep, it could damage the stem and reduce our chances of success. Think of it like drawing a fine line rather than making a slice. By creating several of these careful incisions, we're sending multiple signals to the plant, giving it several opportunities to respond with new growth. Now we're going to bring in a very special ingredient, aloe vera. This plant is often called nature's miracle gel, and for good reason. It contains natural growth hormones, vitamins, and antibacterial properties that make it perfect for helping our orchid cuttings recover and thrive. First, we'll take a large, healthy leaf of aloe vera and cut it into one big chunk. This chunk will be used to coat the main stem, allowing the gel to seep into the tiny cuts we made earlier. Think of it as giving the spike a protective layer, almost like a natural bandage, that not only prevents infection, but also encourages new cell activity. Once we've treated the main stem, we're not done yet. The rest of the aloe leaf can be cut into smaller pieces. These smaller chunks will be set aside and used later in the propagation process, either placed alongside the spike in the growing medium or blended into a solution for soaking. By using every part of the aloe, we're making sure the orchid receives maximum benefit from this natural booster. This step is simple, but it plays a big role in increasing our chances of success when propagating orchids from spikes. Once you're done cutting the aloe vera, take the large chunk we prepared earlier and gently rub it onto the trimmed areas of the flower spike. Make sure the gel makes direct contact with every cut you made along the stem, allowing it to soak into those small openings. This gel works in two important ways. First, it acts as a natural disinfectant, sealing the wounds and protecting the spike from bacteria or fungi. And second, it delivers growth hormones, vitamins, and moisture that help activate new cell growth. As you coat each cut, try to be thorough but gentle. There's no need to press hard. Just let the gel glide across the surface and cover it evenly. By taking the time to do this step carefully, you're giving the spike the best chance to respond with new life. While we're doing this, did you know why people love orchid plants so much? Orchids are more than just beautiful flowers. They hold a special place in history, culture, and even science. For centuries, orchids have been admired for their exotic shapes and stunning colors, and in many parts of the world, they symbolize love, elegance, fertility, and strength. Some cultures believed orchids carried healing powers, while others saw them as rare treasures fit only for royalty. What makes them even more fascinating is their incredible diversity. There are over 25,000 known species of orchids, and each one has its own unique character. Another reason people adore orchids is their extraordinary blooms. Unlike many flowers that fade quickly, orchids can hold their blossoms for weeks or even months at a time, rewarding the grower with lasting beauty. Now, let's take all the smaller aloe vera pieces we cut earlier and place them into a clean container. Next, fill the container with fresh, clean water until the aloe pieces are fully submerged. As the aloe begins to sit in the water, it will slowly release its gel and nutrients, creating a natural growth solution. Once that's done, close the lid tightly and set the container aside for a while. This resting time is important because it gives the aloe a chance to fully infuse into the water. Next, we're going to prepare another clean container. Into this one, pour about a teaspoon of cinnamon powder. Cinnamon might seem like a kitchen spice, but in orchid care it plays an amazing role. It's a natural antifungal and antibacterial agent, which helps protect fresh cuts from infection and encourages healthy healing. Once the powder is inside, fill the container with clean water. Then give a good, steady stir until the cinnamon is well mixed. After stirring, close the lid tightly and then wrap the container in a towel. This little trick helps the mixture stay dark and slightly warm, which allows the cinnamon to steep more effectively into the water. Let it sit for about an hour. After about 1 hour has passed, it's time to prepare our solutions for use. Start by grabbing a clean strainer and carefully pouring the aloe vera mixture through it. This step is important because it removes any leftover chunks or pulp, leaving us with a smooth, clear solution. Once the aloe solution is done, repeat the same process with the cinnamon mixture. Pour it slowly through the strainer to separate the liquid from the powder residue. What you'll have now are two clean, natural solutions, one rich in growth-boosting aloe nutrients, and the other infused with the protective power of cinnamon. Both are ready to be used in the next step of propagation, helping our orchid spikes stay healthy while encouraging new life to emerge. Now that both of our solutions are ready, the next step is to transfer one of them into a larger cup or container. Make sure it's big enough so the entire orchid stem or spike can be fully submerged. The reason we do this is simple. By soaking the stem directly, we allow it to absorb all the beneficial compounds in the solution at once. The aloe solution will nourish the tissues and stimulate cell growth, while the cinnamon solution, if used, will act as a natural shield against bacteria and fungi. Once the stem is completely submerged, let it sit for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes have passed, gently lift the stem out of the solution. Hold it over the container for a moment and let the excess liquid drip off. You don't want it to be dripping wet when you move on. Once it feels light in your hand, let's give the stem a careful inspection. Start by looking closely at the cuts you've made along the edges and the stem itself. The surface should look clean and hydrated, almost as if the plant has taken a refreshing drink. The tissue may appear slightly plump or glossy. That's a good sign. It means the stem has absorbed the beneficial compounds from the soak. Next, we're going to take a small amount of cinnamon powder and gently apply it directly onto the trimmed areas of the stem. You don't need a lot, just a light dusting is enough. Cinnamon works almost like a natural sealant. It helps to dry out the fresh cut, protects it from bacteria and fungi, and reduces the risk of rot as the stem begins its healing process. To apply it, you can dip a cotton swab into the powder and lightly tap it onto the cut, or simply sprinkle a pinch with your fingers. The goal isn't to coat the entire stem, but rather to cover the exposed wounds where we made our cuts. By doing this, we're giving the plant an extra layer of protection, ensuring that the propagation process starts off safe and clean. Now, let's prepare a temporary place for the stem to begin its growth. For this setup, we're going to use a piece of foam as the base. Start by measuring the foam against your pot or container to make sure it fits snugly. The foam should sit flat at the bottom without wobbling, because it will act as a support for the stem while it develops new roots. If the foam piece is too large, don't worry. You can simply trim it down or make a few careful cuts until it fits perfectly. The key here is stability. You want the stem to stay upright once it's placed, and a well-fitted foam base makes that possible. Think of it as building a little bed where your orchid cutting can rest safely as it begins its journey toward new growth. Once that's done, carefully plant the stem directly into the foam, making sure it stands upright and stable. The foam will gently hold the stem in place without putting too much pressure on it, giving it the support it needs to begin forming roots. After positioning the stem, place the foam into your container. Next, pour in just a little bit of water, don't overdo it. The goal is to let the foam absorb enough water to stay lightly moist. This moisture will create a humid environment around the stem, encouraging root development without leaving the cutting sitting in too much water, which could cause rot. Once the foam has soaked up the right amount of moisture, place another pot, this time with clear drainage holes, on top of the container holding the orchid stem. This acts like a protective cover, keeping humidity inside while still allowing some airflow. The clear pot is especially helpful because it lets you keep an eye on what's happening inside, making it easy to monitor both moisture levels and any signs of new growth. After 4 weeks, you'll already begin to notice huge changes. The once bare stem that we placed into the foam will start showing little signs of life. Look closely, and you may see tiny bumps or nodes beginning to swell along the surface. These are the early indicators that roots or even new shoots are forming. The stem itself will often look more vibrant, still firm, still green, and sometimes even a shade brighter than before. This means it's been responding well to the humid environment we created. Around the base, you might also see the first delicate root tips pushing out, searching for moisture and stability. It's a slow but steady transformation, and one that shows your patience and care are paying off. For many growers, this 4-week mark is the most rewarding stage because it's clear proof that the propagation is working. From here, every small change, whether it's a longer root, a thicker node, or the start of a keiki, brings you one step closer to growing an entirely new orchid plant. Before we can press on any further, we'll need to separate the stem. Take a clean, sterilized pair of scissors or garden shears and carefully cut the stem in half. It's very important to only cut the section that has already developed roots. This ensures the new piece is strong enough to survive on its own. Once you've made the cut, immediately dip the freshly trimmed end into cinnamon powder. Just like before, this acts as a natural sealant, closing off the wound and protecting the plant from bacteria, fungi, or rot. Think of it as giving the cutting a protective shield while it heals. This step is crucial because it allows you to create two independent pieces from a single stem, one that already has roots and can continue growing on its own, and the remaining part that still has the potential to produce new growth. Now let's prepare a new home for the two stems. Begin with a pot that has clear drainage holes. This is very important because orchids love good airflow and hate sitting in stagnant water. Place a layer of pine bark at the bottom, letting it fill the pot about halfway. Pine bark is ideal because it provides excellent drainage while still giving the roots something firm to anchor onto. Once the bark is in place, cover the top layer with a thin cushion of moss. The moss will help retain just the right amount of moisture and create a soft, humid environment around the roots without suffocating them. Finally, take the two prepared stems and gently plant them inside the pot. Make sure each stem is positioned upright and has enough space to grow without crowding the other. Once they're secure, press the bark and moss lightly around the base to hold them steady. This will be their new home, where they can continue rooting, strengthening, and eventually producing new leaves and shoots. From here on out, routine care is absolutely critical. This is the stage where consistency will determine whether the young stems thrive or struggle. Keep a close eye on moisture levels. Orchids prefer their roots to be lightly moist, never soaking wet. Water sparingly, just enough to keep the bark and moss slightly damp, and always let the pot drain fully afterward. Light is just as important. Place the pot in a bright area with plenty of indirect sunlight. Too little light will slow growth, while too much direct sun could scorch the tender leaves and roots. A spot near an east-facing window is often perfect. Humidity also plays a key role. If your environment is dry, consider placing a tray of water and pebbles beneath the pot or lightly misting the moss layer. This will mimic the orchid's natural habitat and encourage steady root development. And there you have it. From a single orchid stem, we've managed to create new life and give it a fresh start in its own home. With a little patience, care, and consistency, these cuttings will grow stronger every week, eventually rewarding you with the beauty of new leaves, roots, and, if you stay dedicated, future blooms. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow orchid lovers. It helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more tips and tricks for happy, thriving plants. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep growing with love.